Welcome to the stream, guys. Welcome to the stream. Let's turn that down a little bit. There we go. All right. Welcome everybody to a brand new stream of the channel. So we're trying to hit 400 subscribers by the end of today's stream. I'm excited. I hope y'all as well. We're gonna react to some trailers, talk about Secret Invasion and more. So yeah, without further ado, let's do it. So let's see what we got here so far. I'm gonna have to be in and out, trying my hardest to actually I'm pausing this music. I'm gonna be in and out, trying my hardest to record, not record, record, not record, 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 not recording, no. But yeah, Dune 2 trailer, I know that. Dune Part 2. Passenger, might check that out. Let's see what else we got here. Didn't get any more trailers, right? Besides Dune Part 2, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. I guess just, oh yeah, and Retribution. That's why I fear. Okay, I know there was 2 trailers that dropped. I'll see these 2. I'm not. Alright. Pause the music and let's go ahead and record. Both recordings. Also, let me do my other scene right here. There we go. Perfect. Yeah. Bro, imagine if I literally did reactions on stream and forgot to record the actual trailer, bro. How big of an L that would be, honestly. Alright, so let's do this. Let's exit that out for now. Guys, welcome back to a brand new video. We have Dune Part 2, official trailer number 2. Let's do in 3, 2, 1. We got.
This world is beyond cruelty. You've been fighting the Harkonnens for decades. My family's been fighting them for centuries. They were massacred alongside my father.
Your father didn't believe in revenge.
We believe in Fremen.
Let me fight beside you.
Reload!
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Thanks.
I won't be fighting for him. I'm fighting for my people.
You young pup.
Do you believe in Paul?
There are signs. The prophet. Why is that a bad thing? Use it.
Because all my visions lead to horror.
The heck?
Because you lose control.
Because I gain it. Johnny,
Okay.
you believe in me?
Some great shots in this trailer, by the way.
Atreides is still alive.
I don't know who that is. I'm pretty sure it's a villain.
Deal with this prophet.
Ah, Austin Butler.
Show me who you are.
Ooh.
Father. Was a weak man. who's back from the dead.
Hmm.
I will do what must be done.
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not how!
I will love you as long as I breathe.
This prophecy is how they enslave us!
It's not a prophecy. It's a story.
I don't care what you believe. I believe.
This is epic.
I am Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, Duke of Arrakis.
He who can destroy a thing has the real control of it.
Wow. So, full disclosure, once again, I had not watched the first one. I didn't watch the first unit all period, so I don't know much about the story and lore of these characters. If I had to guess, Timothy Chalamet's dad was a rebellion leader, fighter, whatever, and he fought the good fight, of course, and unfortunately died to protect his family. So now Paul Harry's doing the same thing. That's my guess. I have no idea. But this trailer was packed with so much emotion, fighting, great shots overall. And I'm 90% certain I am watching this with my father when it drops in theaters. So look forward to that after the reaction review and more. But yeah, this was a powerful trailer. I'm not gonna watch it again, but just the chemistry between Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya was absolutely crazy. Just how they go off each other was awesome. And overall, I can't wait to watch this in theaters. I'm gonna watch the first one for sure, but I cannot wait to watch this one in theaters. So as always, if y'all enjoy these reactions and more, don't leave on these. Subscribe to the new. Thank you for watching as always. Peace, stay friendly. Have a good one, y'all. Peace. All right. I'm sorry no one's gonna talk in the chat yet. That's fine. It's just gonna be so weird when people see me like hanging my phone out. Like, what is he doing? Oh yeah. From that far of a distance though. All right. Time for retribution. Guys, welcome back to a brand new video. We have Retribution, Liam Neeson, Say No More. 3, 2, 1. Let's do it. Okay, Lionsgate. Roadside.
Are you gonna answer that?
2 kids.
It's not mine.
Another kid. I can't think of his name though.
Hello, Matt.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, who is this?
There is a bomb under your seat. If you... Do I have your attention?
Yeah, my
I do
attention.
something to you.
You sound so guilty.
What do you want?
Drive to this location.
Honey, something's happened. There's a man who has put a bomb in the car. Under our seats, there are pressure triggers. We can't get out. The car will explode. We're here.
Listen very carefully, or I kill you. Open the glove box. Shoot him.
Why are you doing this? What have I ever done to you?
Dad!
His life or yours.
Matt, I'm your best friend.
You're a murderer now, Matt.
You think I'm the bomber?
Well, I guess you've had a tough day. I know that you lost a lot of money for your clients who invested in your fund. A lot of people are worried about you. You got everybody's attention, Matt.
He is still out there. If you can find him, I will.
I'm in control here.
No, you're not. You hurt my daughter, son of a bitch. I will kill you. What's it gonna be?
Drive.
That was fun. You know, it was fine. You basically know what's gonna happen. He's want to sit there, go through, and basically take the orders, listen to the calls and stuff, and then basically after a certain period of time, it will just continue to build up, build. Oh, nice. That's a big word for you. So, yeah, pretty much. We got Tim and the two kids in the car. I feel like this isn't going to start until like the 30 minutes into the film as always. We're going to see him. We're going to see him and his life, the kids, the wife. There's going to be other subplots involved. We always know that. There's always going to be the generic subplots that no one cares about, but they're going to be there. And in the end, it's like, oh, okay, that's who it was. Who done it? The person behind this calls is so and so, you know. Am I watching this theaters? No, I'm not watching this in theaters. DVD, streaming, in theaters? No. Not watching this. Liam Neeson. I love the boy actor. I don't know his name. But this looks like a popcorn flick to me. So as always, if y'all enjoyed these reactions and more, try one of these, subscribe to new. What y'all think? Do y'all agree with me? Do y'all disagree with me? Let me know as always. Y'all watch Retribution when it comes out. Thank you for watching. Peace. Anything else I need to watch? I never even watched Heels, so. Dead Man's Hand. I kind of want to see that maybe. Markiplier's cameo. Oh wow. That's so dumb. That is so dumb. Should I react to the Challengers trailer, Burb? Should I react to Challengers? Zendaya? Oh, and it's not gonna be anything. It's about a tennis player. You know what the funniest part is? She has to suspend her on her neck every time they do a take. I guarantee you where they kiss her neck, like, and then all of a sudden after the camera stop, and I can't show that apart, obviously. I don't know what that is. All right. There's so many Netflix shows. Yeah, so I don't react to Netflix shows because there's too many of them that you count. You know what I'm saying? Actually, I'm gonna watch this. News rock stars.
Welcome back to New
There's an episode 1 I didn't need to react to.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Boss.
So that's the reaction. All right, let's see. Let's do it. Guys, today so we have Secret Invasion, episode 1, Easter eggs and details you missed. Let's do it in 3, 2, 1. I'm excited to see what I missed.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Boss, and this is a breakdown of Secret Invasion Episode 1. No one is safe, and in this world of lies and deceit and creepy girls with bouncy balls, survival depends on our ability to observe these things closely for subtle nuances, missable details, hidden agendas, and good old-fashioned Marvel Easter eggs. So let's dive back into the Skrull Search and break down this episode frame by frame for everything you might have missed. And quick announcement, New Rockstars is now 3 channels. This channel for the Easter egg breakdowns like you're watching right now, and the Break Room, which is our new home of our Inside Marvel Secret Invasion after shows, and also the deep dive for the special film analyses from me. Subscribe to all 3 and support us with this Skrull inspired shirt at nerdriot.shop. Okay, the opening Marvel Studios title card does not use the flashy swoop through the letters with the iconic MCU moments that we typically see. There's no time for that. This isn't about the Avengers and their boom booms. It's about the stark realities of living in a world where no hero can be trusted. Moscow, present day. The same title card location typeface as we saw in Captain America Civil War. And
I know that.
Stylistically and tonally, the producers of the series are going for spycraft and globe-trotting political drama. And by present day, Marvel Studios executive Jonathan Schwartz confirmed that the show takes place after She-Hulk, so in the MCU timeline, we're looking at like late 2025 or maybe early 2026, but Marvel has proven time and time again that they cannot agree on exact dates for these titles. Agent Everett Ross, or who we think is him, takes a call. After being introduced as a CIA agent in Captain America Civil War, he returned in Black Panther, and then again in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, where we learned his ex-wife is CIA Director Val. He committed espionage for the Wakandans and got arrested, but Okoye broke him free. But since this is a Skrull imposter version of Ross, presumably the real Ross could be hiding in Wakanda, or Ross might have been taken, and he's in a Skrull fracking pod somewhere. I don't think the implication is that the whole character of Ross every time we've seen him has been a Skrull, but rather this imposter has filled in sometime recently while Ross has been MIA.
People were saying that at the end of Wakanda Forever that Okoye is a Skrull as well, which I don't think is the case. I think the Okoye we see at the end of Wakanda Forever is literally Okoye herself. It's not a Skrull at all, period. But that is a good point to make, though. I mean, we don't know. That's the thing I don't like about Secret Invasion, is that you don't know what's real, what's not. It's all illusion to me. You know? And I kind of wish they would come out, but okay, here are the things you're good of, and here's the way like you can watch a show without thinking too much into it. That makes sense. Because for me, like, I have no clue who to trust and who to trust and who not to trust. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
This kind of brick tunnel is a classic spy setting, perhaps inspired by the 1949 Orson Welles film The Third Man. Series director Ali Salim confirmed to us in an interview that films like this were part of his inspiration.
Go back even further, like The Third Man, the classics, right?
Sure.
And because the show is, the Secret Invasion is about trust and suspicion and identity, I always go back to the conversation, Coppola's conversation. There is a sense that Nick Fury, which you'll see in later episodes, sort of evolves into a lone classic American Western gunslinger, which is, again, a little different than we've ever seen him before. And so we started to look at classic American Westerns like The Searchers and even Unforgiven.
Ross tosses his phone, he doesn't want to be tracked, and he pulls a firearm from his ankle, the gun he'll use to plug poor Prescott. We hear Prescott's voice here.
Imagine a world where information can't be trusted.
That was voiced, by the way.
This is actor Richard Dormer, aka Beric Dondarrion, the Lightning Lord from Game of Thrones, which is really perfect for this croaky true believer rant. This speech outlines the whole "who do you trust" theme that ran throughout Brian Michael Bendis' 2009 Marvel crossover event that this series is based on, but specifically Prescott is talking to who he thinks is Ross, and how lately a guy like Ross cannot trust even someone like his ex-wife, Val, the CIA director. I think Prescott is hinting that Val could be a Skrull, without realizing that the guy he's talking to actually is. But while we're playing this game of Skrull Search, I think the CIA director, Julie Louis-Dreyfus, is a very good option of someone who could be a Skrull. Prescott references the hazy distinction between real news outlets and fringe conspiracy websites, something that we saw explored in Spider-Man No Way Home with J. Jonah Jameson's Daily Bugle outlet, which by the end of that film was live streaming in Times Square. As Ross walks up to the building, you can see the windows on the second floor are papered over with newspaper to hide from surveillance and to pin on one's favorite conspiracy collage. Prescott's computer inside shows UKN24 News. I don't believe that's a real news service, but might be something like the BBC or news from the Kremlin, since this is Russia, and Russia doesn't normally allow residents to access Western internet. So Prescott would need to have his own uplink if that's the case. There's a classic Pepe Sylvia research wall, and because this is what I do best, I'm going to break down everything on this. We see news clippings about a Colombian ex-rebel politician surging with young voters. The headline above says that he's a nationalist, and this is already telling us something's up, because in Latin America and in most places in the world, young voters don't typically support far-right nationalists, but in Latin America, left-wingers and socialists are typically more popular with the youngins. So this tells us that both sides of this political shift are really being orchestrated by Skrulls, and there's a lot more than a handful of Skrulls on Earth. Then a redacted document beneath showing that same bearded man who was just on the computer screen, and he can make out the word Treadstone, which is the name of a Black Ops project in the Bourne Identity films. Yellow post-it notes reading Bogota Terror, connected to Heist, who is a target, and beside that to the left, Argentine group claims to be responsible. Prescott later explains that it was an Argentinian terrorist group who attacked Bogota, resulting in a political shift in that country, followed by an attack in the Philippines, and then a mass shooting in Munich, and we see on the board an explosion in London. So rather than independent groups, he says that they are all connected, one group of Skrulls seeking to destabilize the political regimes on Earth.
Chaos. And that's only the beginning.
In a word,
Chaos.
There's also a headline about an embassy attack and, quote, theft of confidential items. This plus that Heist mention might mean the Skrulls are taking tissue and other materials in their plot to create Super Skrull warriors, which in the comics are Skrulls that can also mimic the powers in addition to the appearance of the enhanced individuals that they morph into. And in the trailer, we saw a container with Cull Obsidian on the label. This could have been one of those stolen items. Prescott also has a Russian translation book on the table showing that he has followed this city by city and has to learn the new language everywhere he goes. And I think before he dies, this proves he's not a Skrull. If he took their minds and memories, he would know how to speak their languages already. Ross says,
The atmosphere has been tense.
yeah, because he's a Skrull and adapted to a new global atmosphere. We're on to you. Prescott says,
Started 30 years ago when the Skrulls found Earth. Carol Danvers and Nick Fury promised to find them a new planet.
yeah, he's recapping the events of the 2019 Captain Marvel film, which ended with Carol Danvers leaving Earth with Skrull refugees in the year 1995. Since then, we know Fury has been working with Skrulls on Earth, with Talos and his wife Soren filling in for Fury and Maria Hill in Spider-Man Far From Home. Prescott asks,
Then where is Fury?
He's on Saber.
Saber is a space station that we see in the trailer for the Marvels, and it
Yep.
might be the same space station that Fury was on with several Skrulls in the post-credit scene for Far From Home. Saber is based on the Peak. That's the space station of Sword in the comics. Sword in the MCU has been seen in WandaVision, and under the leadership of Tyler Hayward was focused more on terrestrial anomalies, but with Monica Rambeau involved now, it might have shifted back to his astronaut projects, which seems to be the case in the Marvels trailer. Prescott hands Ross a holodeck. Immediately, we see a Skrull face beam up, and notice that Martin Freeman looks outward over the display, since this Skrull already knows what he's about to see. Prescott sees through Ross's bullshit, and he tackles and chokes him, but Ross shoots him through the chest. And he calls Maria Hill for an extraction, and for Ross to show up in her car's computer display as the actual Agent Ross tells us that she either knew that he would be there, and the Skrulls had infiltrated this unit without her knowing, and that poor Maria Hill was doomed by the end of this episode, or just that Skrulls can bypass whatever voice ID and unique phone that Ross would have set up with Hill ahead of time. Ross flees his tail.
That's the scariest thing about Skrulls, that you don't know. There's not been specifically told to us yet, the audience, the viewers. You don't know how to exactly pinpoint who is a Skrull. How do you know the distinctions of, like, this person's obviously a Skrull and this person isn't a Skrull? You know, that's what I've been saying this whole time. They can mimic your voice, your memories, your mind, everything. I mean, Jesus Christ, they're basically cloning your entire body, you know.
through this blue lit rave with the dancers doing that same fist pump that, you know, Zemo did when he became that meme in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Then on the rooftop is some splashy purple lighting mixing it with the green tones of the night sky to give off the green and purple color palette that we see in the main titles. Skrull skin is of course green, and their bruises and blood show up as the color purple. This in roster doesn't make the jump, and we learn that his pursuer was Talos in disguise. Ross dies a Skrull, bleeding out on the street just as Maria Hill's shadow nearly touches him, foreshadowing her own death this way at the end of the episode. Tommy actually asked the director if Ross was meant to be seen as a Skrull the entire time we've known him or not.
I think all will be revealed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All will be revealed is how my uncle signs off all of his emails, which is
really?
a little ominous.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what does this mean? What are you going to reveal to us?
I might steal it.
So presumably the series will answer that question. I think if you pay to get Martin Freeman in your series, he doesn't just show up in one episode. Like Julie Louis-Dreyfus and Don Cheadle both showed up twice in 2 different episodes, each on Falcon Winter Soldier. Vincent D'Onofrio originally shot scenes for 2 episodes in Hawkeye, though they cut the earlier one with young Echo in the Karate Dojo. So I will think we'll see some form of Everett Ross again. Now, it was confirmed that the opening titles were generated by AI, a company called Method Studios, according to the director. I would have preferred if a human artist or animator were paid to do this work, especially since Marvel held this all the way to June. You could say Marvel might have done this on purpose to start us off with false, non-human imagery. I don't know. I think they just wanted to save a buck. This show ain't about technology, it's about xenophobia. But hey, I'm just gonna point out a few of these details that they fed this AI script to synthesize and to welcome our new computer overlords. We see the destruction of the Skrull homeworld of Skrullos. A serene field explodes in volcanic eruption, followed by the doomed planet as spaceships depart on the right. This is what made the Skrull people so diasporatic. Then a single figure, maybe the first Skrull on Earth with the Skrull craft floating overhead, reminds us visually of Peter Quill when he got abducted by the Ravagers in 1988. The city of New York as Skrull ships float overhead out of sight with the green waves spreading through the buildings. Then Nick Fury, still wearing his eye patch here, standing inside of a Skrull ship, it looks like. Then people walking in front of the Kremlin, I think. It does look like the architecture of Moscow's Red Square as their faces turn to Skrull green. Then members of law enforcement shifting into Skrulls. Then a fire raging through Moscow, foreshadowing the bomb at the end of this episode. Then the clock of Elizabeth Tower, aka Big Ben, glowing green as a hand spins rapidly. Then we get our first look at the Skrull Council, humans in positions of authority, as a Skrull in a suit shifts back into a human form. Presumably many world leaders are actually Skrulls. Then, interesting shot, we see the green cloud hovering over the White House, but unlike the other famous governmental landmarks, which become the color green, the White House remains white, still unaffected by the Skrull influence. I think President Ritson might be one world leader who is still, as of now, uncorrupted, but that also makes him more vulnerable in a way. And then a chessboard foretelling Nick and Maria's chess game later on this episode, and here a bishop shifts into a queen and then into a king. The idea being that faith leaders, queens and kings, all cannot be trusted right now. Fury thinks he's playing Cold War era chess, but really he's playing chess where all of his opponent's pawns have somehow made it to the other side of the board and have now leveled up into pieces that can move however the hell they want. And we're gonna see how Gravik jumps the rank from a bishop, like a lieutenant, all the way to the top as a king. But don't forget, the queen, who we could see as Gaia, is technically the most powerful piece on a chessboard. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. It's the world's largest 1,000 legends about what a network, phone, or therapy gives you for you. BetterHelp, Rockstar of Nick Fury steps off your first month of therapy. A beam of blinding light pierces the forest, and the silhouette of Nick Fury steps off the ship. The blinding light reminds us a lot of Steven Spielberg's lighting in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Fury immediately doubles over, wincing in pain from his knee. He's not as spry as he used to be, and adjusting to Earth's gravity as opposed to the space station isn't as easy on this old-timer. Fury wears a knit cap and a coat, pretty much the same clothes that Skrull Ross did. I know it's just cold, but you know, this show just doesn't really want us to trust anybody. Most importantly, Fury is not wearing his signature eye patch. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Samuel L. Jackson said the patch is part of who strong Nick Fury was, but now his new look is part of his vulnerability now. You can look at it and see he's not this perfectly indestructible person. In Maria Hill's safe house, there's a poster for island art at the Brixton Community Center. Brixton is part of London, so the safe house might have been set up by Falsworth in the MI6. On the rooftop, Talos cultivates a Santo Milica, a Skrull sky plant, he says, planted by Soren, who carry these seeds around. Talos says that it's adapted to this planet, a metaphor for how the Skrulls have adapted to Earth and prefer it as their home, as opposed to some new homeworld that might not even be out there. Now, the word Santo is Spanish for saint or holy or sacred, and Milica is a Hindu name meaning desiring union or wishes unity. So together we get two cultures coming together to electric company together, sacred unity, which is what Talos and Soren wanted between humans and Skrulls. Fury and Talos press their heads together, a Skrull gesture of endearment that we saw Talos and Soren do in Captain Marvel, and Talos says,
But after the blip, you were different.
We only briefly saw Fury post-blip at Tony Stark's funeral in Avengers Endgame, perhaps being so freaked out by Thanos' attack has turned Fury's attention to cosmic threats, and that's why he's on Saber. We learned Talos was kicked off the Skrull Council, and Gravik now leads it, and he set up his base in one of Russia's abandoned nuclear plants, many of which are off the books. We learn that Skrulls can withstand radiation, probably because their shapeshifting occurs on a molecular level, as we learn in Captain Marvel, which would allow their cells to resist neutrons firing through them. We learn that Skrulls are using an American taken from an AAR group, Americans Against Russia, to detonate a bomb for materials taken from Kazakhstan to start a war between Russia and the United States. A plot that we saw in Tom Clancy's espionage thriller, The Sum of All Fears. James Rhodes returns, last seen in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, now briefing US President Ritson, played by Dermot Mulroney, a perfect pick for a show about face blindness, considering the running bit of everyone confusing him with Dylan McDermott.
This is a picture of my face. Who am I? Dylan McDermott or Dermot Mulroney?
In Captain America Brave
I'll
New
see
World,
it.
Harrison Ford has been announced to play US President Thaddeus Ross, so something's gonna go down with President Ritson. On their West Wing style walk and talk, they pass portraits of US Presidents Harry Truman, Ulysses S. Grant, George Washington, I think that's Dwight Eisenhower by the flowers, James Buchanan, Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon, and Ronald Reagan. They aren't in any particular order, and we do skip Gerald Ford in the actual order of succession there, but the idea is, how far back would an alien infiltration have gone? How many of these guys were actually human? The Secret Invasion comics don't shy away from politics. Both Barack Obama and John McCain were depicted as Skrulls on TV screens. And it's interesting we don't see any presidents past Reagan, because as with the West Wing, the modern era of the MCU takes place in a separate historical timeline with different presidents. Like through 2016 in the MCU continuity, the president was Matthew Ellis, who is last seen in Iron Man 3. Fury's nighttime stroll takes him past a food truck with the Cyrillic letters for shawarma, fitting that this founder of the Avengers would grab a bite of their favorite food. Fury passes a kiss and couple, and the woman looks at him. This is one of the people that Gravik turns into later. So all these people who look at Fury on this walk, therefore, are Skrulls watching his every move. This idea of kissing to stay hidden in plain sight was actually a move by Steve Rogers and Natasha Romanoff in Winter Soldier.
Kiss me.
What?
Public displays of affection make people very uncomfortable.
Yes, they do.
Yet this Skrull doesn't care if Fury looks at her, because Gravik knows that his plot is too far along to stop. A ball bounces out in the street and a girl stares at Fury, the same girl and ball emulated by Gravik later. This raises some red flags, and it's the same rightful alien suspicion that Will Smith has in Men in Black.
May I ask why you felt little Tiffany deserved to die?
I'm thinking, you know, 8-year-old white girl, middle of the ghetto, bunch of monsters, this time of night with quantum physics books. She about to start some shit, Zed. She's about 8 years old. Those books are way too advanced for her.
Olivia Colman plays Sonia Falsworth of the MI6. Her name Falsworth could make her related to James Montgomery Falsworth, the British member of the Howling Commandos in the first Captain America film. The MCU did something similar with Jim Morita's grandson being the principal in Spider-Man Homecoming. Falsworth jokes that Fury could have been the ghost of Paul Robeson, referring to the actor and singer best known for his rendition of Old Man River from Showboat. Robeson was politically active. He embraced socialism. He visited Moscow. So I don't think Falsworth is just talking about their blackness, but rather a black man in Moscow specifically. Falsworth's office is lined with clocks, all set to a different hour, but at the same minute, her way of knowing what time it is in each country. And Falsworth explains,
It's an old English spy master that started the tradition. A clock goes up when your time in the circus is done.
Circus, huh? Well, John Lee Carey nicknamed the MI6 the Circus because the headquarters were located at Cambridge Circus. So essentially, the spy master would put a clock up whenever a spy retired or perhaps died or was killed in action. Falsworth says,
I still haven't forgiven you for destroying my very expensive flat.
You mean city?
Yes, they're referring to the events of Spider-Man Far From Home when Nick Fury was involved with Mysterio's use of Stark drones that did quite a bit of damage to London. Falsworth says that Fury's not knowing about the Kazakhstan theft and letting her thugs take him are signs that he's just too old for this fight, when in reality, he went out for a walk knowing that he'd probably get taken, and probably so that he could bug Falsworth's room. He even tells her that he let them take him so that he could get to her. I think he's more up for this than she thinks. In fact, that limp he walks around with may be performative so that people will underestimate him. Outside the Skrull base, New Skrullos, a newcomer named Beto walks up and delivers a passphrase.
Home in my own skin.
It's not just home that they're looking for a home where they can walk around without having to be in disguise. I like how his sweatshirt looks like a chessboard, chess being a common motif in this episode. The guard booth sign says Zelezhnograd, which is a town in Russia with a developed nuclear industry, but it's not 312 kilometers south of Moscow. Gaia gives Beto a blue Skrull fruit, just another example of Skrull plant life growing successfully on Earth. They are gradually terraforming it. Gaia enters the room with the humans whose bodies they've taken so far. The second one she passes is that art dealer that we see later in the episode, Vasily Pobrishkin. And already bringing up a question I had after watching this episode, why does Gaia need to pay the Skrull posing as that art dealer for the bomb materials? I'm thinking maybe the money helps him balance his books and pay the people he smuggled the bomb parts from. The Skrulls bring in the kidnapped AAR member saying take his face, and then they strap him in saying take his mind. These shells that they keep the humans in zap their temples to keep them dormant and to bring their memories to the forefront. Talos Talos and the other Skrulls use similar memory technology on Carol Danvers at the beginning of Captain Marvel. But this idea of Skrulls assuming the humans' minds is a really interesting concept because it forces their Skrull identities to the back of their minds and forces them to carry two souls at any given time. This idea was explored in the FX series The Americans, where in later seasons, a Soviet spy played by Matthew Reeves began to sincerely adopt American culture and values, and that really just messed with his head. Fury tells Talos a bit later,
You know, I know a bunch of good-looking Skrulls. You ain't one of them.
Okay, all right, guys.
yeah, I'm curious to learn what other relationships with Skrulls Fury might have. Did this guy hook up with some Skrulls? I mean, he got to know Talos and Soren and all their friends. I'm just saying. Back at New Skrullos, Gaia reads a book called Understand the Human Mind, a Skrull trying to use human psychology against us. This is why we should never publish books about psychology. I'm just kidding. Gravik loads cube after cube of sugar in his drink. A villain having a bit of a sweet tooth is a recurring trope. We saw this with Hans Alanda in Inglourious Bastards and Father Flynn in Doubt. We don't see Gravik sipping the tea. Maybe the guy's just wasting sugar because he hates processed human food. Gravik's second in command is a Skrull named Pagon, who from the comics was the Skrull that had impersonated Elektra and the lover to the Skrull queen, Varenki. He sends Gaia off with a driver named Xerxu, which is the name of a Skrull from the 70s Marvel Premiere Comics who briefly assumed the identity of Richard Nixon. So back to that portrait of Richard Nixon, it might have been a Skrull. Because no American in the modern age would willfully resign. Humans ain't that honorable, it turns out. Gaia sees an inflatable Russian nesting doll, another example of this idea of people having other identities inside their shell. Fury reminds Talos that Talos is 136 years old, and Talos says that equates to less than 40 in human years, meaning that Skrulls live somewhere around 280 Earth years. This poses a huge problem for Earth. If the Skrulls are populating the planet rapidly, living such long lifespans and consuming natural resources at roughly the rate as humans would consume them, but with lives over 4 times longer than humans live, Earth's ecosystem would collapse unless the Skrulls put in place population controls. Talos asks Fury what he got for his midlife crisis shopping spree.
What you get for yours, the Avengers.
Yeah, Fury considers the Avengers his impulse buy, responding to an existential panic that he was feeling. It's also interesting that he considers 2012 to be Fury's midlife. He's pretty old by the time of that movie. That was only 13 years ago, suggesting that he's got a lot more life he intends to live. Paprishkin says that the chair Fury sits in belonged to Louis XV, who is the great-grandson of Louis XIV, the great French absolute monarch, and Louis XV was the grandfather to Louis XVI, who was executed during the French Revolution. But Fury later mixes it up and calls it the Louis XIV chair. Fury interestingly says that everyone gets one lie, but not two, making us wonder what Fury's one lie is, because otherwise, why would he tolerate a single lie from others? Does he have a family we haven't met yet? Does he like to fart on planes? Fury shoots the Skrull Paprishkin, waiting until that Skrull growls at Talos, "You betrayed your own people," because Fury knows that when someone says that, when someone feels that way, there's no coming back from that. This Skrull is motivated to kill. Talos, though, feels horrible that he played a role in one of his own kind getting killed. Gaia kicks Hill's ass, and Talos has a chance to check in with his daughter. He reveals Soren's death to her.
How?
Why did you ask? The people that you work for.
Yes, Gravik was responsible in some way for Soren's death. Perhaps Soren was in human form during one of the terrorist attacks that we saw on the newspaper board. Maybe she was trying to protect the materials that were being stolen. Or maybe Soren was trying to get Gaia back, and Gravik killed her for getting too close. At this bar, Fury speaks some Russian with this guy at the bar.
Смотри сколько хочешь. Все равно не будешь таким, как раньше.
Повторите, пожалуйста, товарищ.
Interesting that he can speak Russian. As a figure during the Cold War, Fury was stationed in a number of places where he'd have to use this language.
Belfast, Bucharest, Belgrade, Budapest. I like the bees, I can make them rhyme.
But this old man is another form Gravik takes at the end of the episode. So this is really a direct message from Gravik to Fury to make him doubt himself. It's just really creepy to learn how close Gravik was to Fury throughout the episode, but never chooses to strike. It's in this moment where across the bar, Gravik is carefully watching Fury and Hill play chess, and that's probably when he decides to kill Hill and not Fury. Fury says this is how he kept the Cold War from going hot.
Spooks like me, bad shots.
You can't say that.
No, you can't say that.
Yes, that word is considered both a derogatory term for black people and an archaic term for spy. Fury probably means both ways. A chessboard separates them, and Hill takes white. Of course she does. And she does a standard E4 opening. That's where white moves the king's pawn 2 squares up. It's the most popular chess opening as it immediately stakes a claim on the center and frees 2 pieces, the queen and the king's bishop, for action. What do we see in the opening of this episode? A bishop, a queen, and a king. Fury asks if Hill is covering her bases, which refers both to their conversation and her style of play. Fury remembers the moment from the blip from the post-credit scene of Avengers Infinity War, including his near F-bomb.
Well done.
The director, Ali Salim, expanded on this in his interview with us.
The blip was a very disorienting thing for him. So I think he really is on his back foot. But the whole show is about, can he regain it or not?
After asking Pagon to delay the strike, we think Gaia is getting cold feet, but it's just to give us false hope ahead of her meeting with her father. She tips off Talos that there will be 3 couriers, and only now, upon looking back on it, do we realize they just came up with 3 empty shells of the shell game, 2 couriers, and Gaia herself, to occupy the exact number of people in the other's group, Fury, Hill, and Talos. All of this was a big setup. They lose these couriers in the Russian Unity Day celebration. We see some acrobats and some clowns, making this exactly the kind of circus that Falsworth was referring to earlier. But Fury sees that girl with the same rainbow ball from his night walk the night before. He follows her as she shapeshifts into the old man at the bar that he bought a shot, and then into the woman from the kissing couple who stared at him, and then finally Gravik himself. And the fact that Gravik is shapeshifting in plain sight of everyone else in this Russian Unity Day hangout shows us how little he cares about being spotted as a Skrull, because he knows that bigger fireworks are going to happen right in this second anyway. He detonates the bombs, and notice how Hill would have survived, but what was she doing? Helping someone get to their feet. That's what slowed her down, so that fake Fury could catch up to her. Hill's final words to Nick Fury are, while it wasn't Fury directly who pulled the trigger, blood remains on his hands, and it hurts him so much to think that in her dying moments, she thinks that she was betrayed. But also we could read this as Maria Hill warning her old mentor that there is a second Nick Fury in the field. He took his eye off the ball, and he refused to make a chess move. He allowed himself to fall 3 steps behind and get played. So, God, R.I.P. Maria Hill. Kobe Smulders, you've been great to us these past 11 years of the MCU. We'll really miss you. And I think part of the reason this episode established that Soren was dead was to remove any doubt. Hill's known Skrull impersonator is gone too, so there's really no chance that this isn't her here. If this series can kill off Maria Hill, someone who's been with us since 2012, it can permanently change the status of any MCU figure. And little detail in this final shot of Maria Hill bleeding out, beside her is a dropped Russian flag, colors white, blue, and red, just like the colors of Maria Hill. A white top, a blue coat and jeans, and red blood staining it all. What an episode! Please subscribe to the 3 channels of this network.
That was a unique detail you notice. To be honest with all of you, I'm not saying not gonna do any more things you missed, because I feel like I don't talk enough. I'm just too busy reacting and getting information, if that makes sense, you know? So, I think for now, I just want to stop recording.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of Secret Invasion Episode 2. Fury's got a home life, the Groot is loose, and Rhodey is ready to carpet bomb us back to when he was Terrence Howard. Who can we trust? We found so many details and Easter eggs and connections that you might have missed. And thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's vid. More about them in a minute. And remember, New Rockstars is now 3 channels. This main channel for these Easter egg breakdowns, my channel, The Deep Dive, for deeper analyses of classic titles, and The Break Room, which is the new home of our Inside Marvel reaction in the Secret Invasion after show. So subscribe to all 3 and you can support us with some Skrull inspired shirts at nerdriot.shop. Okay, the episode opens in Brixton, a neighborhood in London. We actually saw a poster last episode for a Brixton Community Center Island Art series. And the mural on the walls of this community center may be depicting some of Brixton's Afro-Caribbean population, which it is known for. Actually, in 1981, the Brixton riots occurred when some of these young immigrants clashed with police, which had been using racist stop and search policies. So really setting this immigrant story in Brixton comes with some real-world historical parallels. But this is in 1997, which would be 2 years after the events of Captain Marvel in 1995. This would be early in Nick Fury's era of launching his new Avengers initiative before it would be shut down by the World Security Council leading up to the 2012 Avengers events. Fury deputizing these Skrull refugees might have been part of that first wave plan of Avengers on Earth. This would be where he would make mistakes he would improve upon with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. And note that with every Nick Fury transition, he would build things like helicarriers and now Saber, aircraft, and spacecraft to take the fight more and more off the ground. Vara introduces Fury to young Gravik. In the new Avengers comics from 2015, Vara is the name of a Skrull-Kree hybrid, one of the Knights of the Infinite, who gets saved by young Avengers Hulkling and Wicked. Hulkling is also half Skrull. And Vara seems to be the same Skrull that Fury later marries, Priscilla Fury, played by Charlene Woodard. Now, Vara isn't listed in the credits, but this Skrull does have a similar height and voice to that of Woodard.
His parents were killed in the last stand against the Kree. Aren't you forgetting something?
Fury does the Skrull gesture of touching foreheads, which he did with Talos last episode, and we saw Talos do with his family in Captain Marvel. Vara says Gravik's parents died in the last stand against the Kree. In Captain Marvel, we learned that the Kree destroyed the Skrull homeworld of Skrullos after the Skrulls refused to submit to the rule of the Kree Empire. And we saw some of that destruction and the escape in the opening title imagery. Ever since, the Skrulls have been a nomadic race, but the Skrull and the Kree remain locked in a kind of shadow war that was hinted at in Spider-Man Far From Home.
I thought Kree having sleeper cells was top secret information.
Nick.
Fury says,
He's a child.
Only to human eyes.
Talos last episode indicated that the Skrull maturation and lifespan is different than that of humanity. They live much longer lives, but it sounds like they mature much sooner. So we can also apply that early maturity to Gaia in Captain Marvel, the moment when she was on the space station and saw some Kree get shot. The violence she saw was witnessed by someone with more of an adult context of what it meant. Notice how Vara is wearing this interesting ring on her right hand. We don't see that ring on Priscilla's finger later, which is odd because Priscilla seems pretty strict about the rings that these two have to wear, but maybe this old one represented a union in her past life on Skrullos. Fury asks the Skrulls to take on human faces as he promises to find them a new home. Using Earth as a refugee colony will also be what the Asgardians of New Asgard do in Endgame and Thor Love and Thunder. And in Wakanda Forever, there was a news ticker reporting that President Ritson signed a trade agreement with New Asgard. And there was no expectation that the Asgardians assimilate or changed anything about themselves, as I guess they look humanoid enough and drink Asgardian ale and eat Thanos-themed ice cream and do Old Spice commercials. So this expectation for the Skrulls represents the way some ethnic and immigrant groups are expected to hide or erase their heritage while others get to celebrate theirs. Soren here is played by Kate Braithwaite in her Skrull form and Charlotte Baker in her human form. In Captain Marvel, in A Far From Home, she was played by Sharon Blynn, and that was only ever a Skrull form because we never saw the human form besides Maria Hill. In the aftermath of the Russian Unity Day attack, Maria Hill is definitely dead, folks. Since she does not revert here to Skrull form, I don't think there's any hope for Tahiti from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. either. This episode shows us her casket with an American flag draped over it, an angry mother. They would not go to these dramatic lengths if they intended Maria's Hill death to be a fake out. Let's not do the thing that we do in every Marvel show and just overthink the wrong things. There's only 6 episodes of this, and obviously they're setting up bigger mysteries than this. The AAR guy, that's the Skrull Brogan in disguise as human, says,
I'm an American! I'm an American! I'm an American!
Yes, he says, I'm an American over and over and over again because Brogan really wants these Russians to think it was an American who did this to raise the tensions between these powers. The guy who grabs Fury shapeshifts back into Talos, and I just like visually how they use the rising window to help with the visual effect of the transition. Like by the time the glass is up, it's mostly just Talos, but with just a few final bits shifting left. Disguised as a blonde woman, Talos tells the Russian soldiers that finding a black American on train from Moscow to Poland is less likely than finding aliens. Really pushing the aliens, Talos! I was reminded of how Eames in Inception uses a blonde woman as a disguise to trick Fisher, based on the woman in the red dress in The Matrix, and Inception also begins with a heist where? In a train car. But the sign on the seat behind Fury translates to Moscow to Warsaw, and the name of the train line translates to Soaring Owl, an owl being important imagery for Nick Fury as a statue for his hidden camera lens spying on Sonya Falsworth. Fury tells Talos about his childhood in Alabama, taking long train rides with his mom to Detroit, and having to ride in a segregated train car and play a game called Tell Me Something I Don't Know.
One time she said, tell me something I don't know about you and Susie. Me and Susie had a standing game of doctor. We've been playing behind Old Man Jackson's barn.
Old Man Jackson, nod to Samuel L. Jackson himself. Fury explains that whenever he'd say a crazy lie, that would tell his mom that he was hiding a greater lie. This recalls a story that Nick Fury told about his grandpa back in Captain America Winter Soldier.
Every week some punk would say, what's in the bag? What'd he do? He'd show him. Bunch of crumpled ones and a loaded .22 Magnum. Granddad loved people, but he didn't trust them very much.
So really it was Fury growing up in the segregated South that gave him multiple influences for not trusting people. Fury uses the game on Talos to learn that all 1 million of the Skrulls that fled Skrullos after it was destroyed by the Kree settled on Earth, and most of them after the blip in the past few years while Fury was on Saber. So that post-blip homeless crisis that affected humans on Earth and all these other titles is also affecting Skrulls, particularly across the universe. And I point this out because nowhere is now supposed to be a welcoming refugee colony in the MCU in space, so why didn't more Skrulls go there? Well, maybe some did. We do find out in a second about other Skrull colonies, but hey, maybe nowhere ain't that tolerant. It is a population mostly Xandarians. Maybe they're as intolerant to Skrulls as Terrans are. Really, I think it was just Gravik's appeal as a strong military leader that attracted more Skrulls to Earth than to anywhere else. Talos says that every Skrull that isn't in Emperor Drogi's colony, they answered. So in the Secret Invasion comics, Drogi Fenu-Idu, spelled a little bit differently, is the head priest of sciences who studied captured members of the Illuminati and discovers and invents Super Skrulls, which are Skrulls that can mimic the powers and the appearances of those they impersonate. And that is what seems to be the plot in the works revealed later this episode. We don't know if the Emperor Drogi that Talos mentions here is part of that operation. He just seems to be the current galactic leader of the Skrulls. And the fact that they call him Emperor means that in their eyes, they still view their race as part of a dynastic empire. They still have some pride in their old ways.
I will say this much. So one thing I love about this show is how serious tone it is. It's not too jokey. It's not too comedic. It's just right. I cannot wait for this finale to come. It's sometime in July, of course. You know, I'm really excited overall. I cannot wait. But yeah, the people were thinking like, wait a second, can Skrulls become Super Skrulls by basically taking on the Avenger powers? And that's maybe what they're trying to do in this show. We'll see.
Talos says that he wants humans and Skrulls to coexist, but Fury shoots back.
Humans can't coexist with each other, Talos. You've been here long enough to know that. We've been at war with each other since we could walk upright. There is not enough room or tolerance on this planet for another species.
Yeah, Fury's experiences with racism have set him up with pessimism for human tolerance, and you cannot blame him. Back in London, Maria Hill's mother, Elizabeth...
I understand where Talos is coming from, but to say it's how you have to be realistic, it's like, how can you expect, one species to coexist with each other, like, how we are now? If we can't go to the now, what makes it we can add another batch to the bunch and then make it any better,
oversees the transfer of her corpse draped in an American flag. There's another woman with her dressed in civilian attire. I'm not sure who this is. Maybe her friend or a partner or someone provided by the US government to be a kind of grief counselor. Not really sure. But Fury having to face his grieving mother, for one, reminds me of Brody in Jaws facing Mrs. Keaton, but in the MCU, totally reminds me of Tony Stark having to face Miriam Sharp in Captain America Civil War. It's just rare that we meet the parents of these people that are killed in the conflicts. And it's what sobers up these MCU heroes to take responsibility for all their avengering. Also, Fury is back in the skull cap, no glasses compared to the frames in the different hat he wore on the train. So far we see like two Furies. There's a lower status humbler Fury outfit and the more pointed confrontational look where he's got lenses with special infrared sensors where he might be able to like detect more things about people. A news montage shows CUV News, a fictional outlet in the MCU that appeared on screens in Sword HQ and WandaVision. We learned some of the world leaders currently in the MCU, UK Prime Minister Pamela Lawton, NATO Secretary General Sergio Caspani, who seems to be that pseudo government figure who appears in the opening title imagery, and then FXN News, probably a version of Fox News, no doubt, hosted by Chris Stearns, a pundit in the vein of Sean Hannity, played by Christopher McDonald, who played Shooter McGavin and Happy Gilmore, between him and Bradley Whitford as Peggy Carter's boss, from 90s Adam Sandler comedies playing MCU assholes. I love it. Gravik tells Gaia that he wanted to see just how much of Fury was left.
It's just vapors. Old.
Which recalls Fury's dusting that we flashed back to last episode that at the end of Infinity War, like Sonya Falsworth, Gravik is saying that moment changed Fury forever, that not all of the Spy Master faded back.
You don't punish a man by giving him what he wants.
Yes, and I'm sorry to link everything back to Thanos, but it does recall Thor chopping off Thanos' head at the start of Endgame, trying to punish the Mad Titan by giving him the death that he really wanted. It also echoes T'Challa's punishment of Zemo, refusing to let him die at the end of Civil War. As they pull up to the building, again, we see purple lighting mixing with the green tones of the street and the car visor to give this setting the green and purple tone of the Skrull's skin and blood, and inside, it's all green. Green carpet, green wallpaper, not even trying to hide their true
I even noticed that, dude. That was nothing to me that was like a noticeable detail, That's... Wow. I'm gonna tell my dad that. I'm like, yo, next time you watch this show, keep an eye out for that, will you? Please. Yeah, no one's tuned in, but it is what it is.
Colors. We meet the Skrull Council, which includes the UK Prime Minister, the NATO Secretary General, and the media pundit, plus two others, Shirley Cigar and Christopher Go, playing a character credited as Jack Hyuk Bin, maybe a celebrity or a tech leader of some kind. I assume we'll find out in future episodes. In the Secret Invasion comics, several politicians and public figures, including Barack Obama, John McCain, and Stephen Colbert, are confirmed to be Skrulls. Gravik accuses them of drinking man's wine. Gaia told Beto last episode that they drink Skrull wine, yet we saw Gravik plopping 3 cubes of human sugar and water in his tea, but he didn't sip the tea, so maybe he was just wasting it. Gravik says he prefers dogs to humans because
They don't lock each other up in cages. They don't pimp, poison. They don't go out of their way to degrade and destroy their own habitat.
A naive reading of human history.
It's the only reading in human history.
What an indictment! Ultron came to the same conclusion, remember? It's interesting how Gravik nods to the conservative media pundit for lock each other up in cages, as that guy's talking points would have defended mass incarceration most likely, and as a resident of New Skrullos and in an irradiated nuclear plant, Gravik can see how destructive human industry is. But you know, really he should blame the extraterrestrial eternal Fastos for that one. Gravik makes his case in the Skrull language, but then switches back to English for...
I think it's a war. I think it's a war.
I wonder if the English word for war is more powerful than the Skrull word for it, since the Skrulls lost in their resistance against the Kree. The NATO Secretary General asks,
and what happens if the Avengers return?
You don't think I thought about that?
Yes, he's referring to his Super Skrull program to make Groots, Cull Obsidians, Extremis soldiers, and Frost Giants out of themselves. We'll learn more about that later. The UK Prime Minister nominates Gravik to the wartime leader position, Skrull General, like Senator Binks nominating Senator Palpatine to have emergency wartime powers. And now, Gravik is the Senate. And thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring UT Rockets, Rocketory the rat. And there's no head to allow Shirley to leave unharmed despite her dissension, which indicates that he knows Talos will learn about this and probably wants to draw Talos out. Gravik returns to the New Skrullos radioactive shantytown to a hero's welcome, and he tells this one woman,
without you, this wouldn't be possible.
Yeah, I feel like he's actually doing this for Gaia. Like a kind of David Koresh cult vibe going on here. Like maybe he's grooming another younger female to make Gaia feel less important. Either way, I don't think he really means when he says that without her he couldn't have done this. Gaia sees how Gravik is keeping her out of the loop. She follows him and Pagon into an old reactor plant control room looking a lot like the one at Chernobyl. Here they're building these energy fields that I assume will radiate Skrulls into Super Skrulls. The process is being overseen by a couple named the Daltons. There is a Charles Dalton in the comics who's a member of the MI-13 who becomes a political liaison for S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm not sure if it's connected, but Dalton and Pagon talk about the failure of the recent harvests, which the subtitles capitalize the H on, suggesting that the Skrulls see this process of gathering donor DNA as a kind of sacred process, maybe something that they have a divine right to. Rhodey gets grilled by the other heads of state. The file photos they have of Fury on the screen include one of Fury when he was younger. Judging by the jacket, looks like a publicity still from Avengers Age of Ultron. And let's quickly break down his dossier. His aliases include nicknames listed on his wiki page: Nick Fury, 100% red-blooded Earthman, Mr. Furry, Foxtrot, Jacob Veach, which is an alias Nick Fury used for a holding company in Captain America Winter Soldier, then One-Eyed Man, Son of a Bitch, and the Most Dangerous Man. We also see his associations, which include the US Army, S.H.I.E.L.D., CIA, Project Pegasus, remember that was the Tesseract research project we saw at the beginning of 2012 Avengers and in Captain Marvel, and Nick Fury's crew, which was the nickname of Fury's post-S.H.I.E.L.D. associates that we saw in Age of Ultron. I want to quickly thank our team of researchers, including MT, Eric Francisco, Gina Ippolito, Jordan Morris, and Noah Chen, for helping me ID these and a lot of other cool stuff in this breakdown. Prime Minister Lawton wears a green necklace. These Skrulls cannot help but show off their verdigris. I'm going to assume that everyone wearing green flair on this dais, like the leader to the left of France, that African leader behind Italy, these guys ain't just Irish. When Rhodey doubts the Russian intel, the diplomat from Slovakia humps.
Respectfully, Prime Minister, I can't take the authenticity of Russian supplied photos at face value. Slovakia rolls its eyes at me one more time, I'm gonna put on the suit and carpet bomb it.
Rhodey went from the calm voice of reason in Tony Stark's Senate hearings in Iron Man 2 to speaking like the Boom Boom Phase 1 Iron Man himself. Rhodey reminds Fury that his other suit is made of titanium. The War Machine suit branched from the Iron Man line at the heavily armored Mark II phase, and at that point, Tony was still building his suits from a gold titanium alloy. At the tavern, Fury has changed back into his business mode attire, glasses, and the fedora hat. Remember, these are the super spy glasses with augmented displays and infrared scanners, so Fury might be wearing them to detect things like an elevated heart rate to see if Rhodey is lying about being a Skrull. And that also might be why Nick Fury was wearing the glasses with Talos earlier on the train. He's only wearing them when he's trying to figure out the secrets of the person he's talking to. Rhodey threatens to hand Fury back over to the Russians.
Forgetting your rank here, Colonel Rhodes?
Now, Nick Fury's rank in the army was Colonel, but presumably former S.H.I.E.L.D. director and current Saber director might outrank whatever Rhodey is.
Well, I guess I'll take your out on chat. I'll be right back. Hey everybody, so unfortunately, due to me not feeling well, I'm going to end the stream a little early. So as always, thank you for tuning in. Peace out, guys. Stay friendly. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.